Chris, and as you can see today, I am here at the World War II Memorial commemorating one of the world's most impactful wars in history. As many of you know, we were on the winning side of this war thanks to our allies such as the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, France, China, alongside many more. But contrary to popular belief, it was more than just this large alliance of militant powers that won us this war. A not so well-known factor, yet arguably the most impactful one, was a German cryptology machine called Enigma. So back in the 1920s, before World War II had even started, Dr. Arthur Scherbius invented the first version of an Enigma-esque cipher machine, hoping to sell it to the German government and military shortly after World War I. When they turned him down, he began trying to sell it with his company, Cipher Machine Corporation, and failed hopes to put it on the commercial cryptograph market. Shortly after Scherbius' death, with the looming chance of war hanging over the heads of the German military, the German army decided to take up the cipher machine as their own and developed their own commercial cipher machine. And the German Navy was not far behind. And by 1928, they had introduced their own version as well, Enigma G.2. Both versions of Enigma only offered 3 changeable cipher routers, which was proven to be insecure due to the lack of possible permutations. By this time, Germany wasn't the only country to be using cipher machines like Enigma. Both America and Europe had access to similar cipher machines, but compared to the sheer complexity of the German machines, ours were considered simple and inferior. The successive models of Enigma used in the war resembled a typewriter, which was powered by a mechanism which contained a number of rotatable drums engraved with the letters of the alphabet. Continued successive models had routers that reset every 24 hours, which was what made these fascinating machines so complex and hard to crack. And naturally, the Germans were extremely smart about how they designed these machines. They complexified them to a point where there were too many keys for cryptanalysts to use brute force to try and crack. To put this all into perspective, it was calculated that if a cryptanalyst was attempting to break Enigma and trying 1 key per second, it would take them 4,667 million days to try all of the keys. To better explain this, I consulted Dr. Mark Baldwin, or as he is more popularly known, Dr. Enigma. He sent me many useful explanations, but even with those, it was difficult for me to understand. But in general, and in the most simple words I can put it, Enigma contains a 26-letter input keyboard and a 26-letter output lamp board. The text you write on the input keyboard is referred to as plain text, and the text that appears on the lamp board as a result is the ciphertext. As you can imagine, these machines were developed to be so inspiringly complex that even German cryptologists and generals who used them believed they were unbreakable, which is why it became the perfect secure form of communication for the Germans to use during World War II. To improve upon encryption mistakes that had been made by the Germans during World War I, they decided to use the infamous Enigma for communications during World War II. But contrary to what many have thought throughout the years, there were different versions of Enigma that were used in different branches of the German military. And even if the same version of Enigma was being used in different branches, it was commonly used in a different manner among those branches, which is partially responsible for the continued complexity of the machine. At the start of the war, the concept of Enigma had already become infamous among the Allies, but despite that, most of the countries trying to solve it attempted to keep it confidential. The most famous example of this being with Great Britain and the top-secret code-breaking work happening at Bletchley Park. But before England had really caught wind of the idea of attempting to break Enigma, Poland had already begun work on solving certain versions of it. In 1929, the Polish government went and selected some of the top mathematicians from Poznań University to take part in a cryptology course, so that they could be trained to take part in the country's efforts to break these German codes. They specifically chose Poznań due to its desirable location where the majority of students would be German speakers. When the Poles originally began attacking Enigma, there were only 6 plugs in use on it, providing 100,391,791,500 different ways for those plugs to be plugged into the plug board. That may sound extremely complex, but it was considered simple to the increased 10 plugs used by the Germans later in the war. When other countries caught wind of the Poles' success in beginning to break some of the more simple versions of Enigma, they wanted to take part. Some allies, such as the French, began to aid the Poles by providing them with additional information, which, contrary to popular belief, simply sped up the Polish efforts but didn't drive them. The Polish mathematicians working to crack Enigma are commonly the lesser-known forces that worked against Enigma. The country which was increasingly put in the spotlight was Great Britain. Great Britain was able to expand upon the foundation of Enigma code-breaking that the Polish had laid for them. They were able to conquer many of the simpler versions of Enigma, such as the German Air Force's Enigma at top-secret military bases. such as the famous Bletchley Park. Similar to the Polish efforts, the British government recruited many different gifted mathematicians, such as Alan Turing, William Tute, Gordon Welchman, and many more in order to accomplish this. Alan Turing made quite a mark through his invention of the bomb machines. These fascinating machines were how codebreakers were able to test certain hypotheses concerning messages that accelerated the rate which German messages could be encrypted, which would then be sent away to another hut to be translated by linguists. Bletchley Park was organized with a system of huts or buildings, which each did something different, all working towards the common goal of encrypting German messages sent through Enigma. The majority of German militant enigmas were able to be solved either at Bletchley Park itself or by the Polish and other allies, but one was extremely difficult to solve, the German naval enigma. This is that version of Enigma that is most famous, and in order to win the war, the allies had to crack this version of Enigma. The hut at Bletchley dedicated to that goal was Hut 8, which contained the most famous mathematicians we mentioned earlier. This was where the influential bomb machines were created by Alan Turing. Though I won't delve deep into the detailed workings of the bomb machine, I will say it was extremely life-changing for the Allies during the war by allowing us to access such a surplus of important German messages, which allowed us to use militant strategy to beat the Germans.
There are people who say that it was a significant part of the contribution. There are other people, the Russians for instance, who say, yeah, it was useful, but it wasn't important, because what really counted was the terrific slaughter of German troops on the Eastern Front. And that if Germany hadn't been weakened by trying to fight on the Eastern Front, because they lost a huge amount of equipment, a huge number of men there, then although Bletchley Park and the breaking of Enigma was good, it wasn't crucial.
So with all of that information in mind that I stated earlier, I want to throw a quick statistic at you. It's been estimated that each year of combat in Europe during World War II, 7 million people would die. So by solving Enigma, which shaved years off of the war, it means the bomb machine's work, alongside the work of all who took part at Bletchley and other bases, saved millions of lives. And keep in mind, these aren't just the lives of those in active combat, but civilians who were traveling on ships that were warned of possible German attacks through the encryption of these Enigma messages. And it was the encryption of messages like these, which contained German plans, that gave us the upper hand for the rest of the war by allowing us to tweak militant plans to fit and to properly combat German ones. It's extremely apparent through all of this that just the solving of Enigma allowed us to win the war by allowing us access to the large surplus of important German messages, which gained us enough strength and intelligence to force them to surrender. Though this wasn't direct to many, it's obvious that this would have been a lot harder to accomplish and take a lot longer if we wouldn't have been able to solve it. And who knows, none of us know what a few more years onto the war would have done, or even months. This allowed us to save millions of lives and develop extreme new forms of intelligence, such as the computer, or as it was known back then, the Turing machine. And we are so thankful for all of that.